Just flew in from MGSV boot camp, and boy are my ears tired of hearing you people ask if quiet is actually a little Nicaraguan boy. So, as some of you may have heard, I recently had the great fortune of spending 4 days at Kojima Productions LA as part of a press event called MGSV Boot Camp, on behalf of Metal Gear Solid Forums, or MGSF for regulars. Seriously, thank you guys so much. I hope this video, and whatever video that may follow after the game drops, delivers. I met a lot of really cool MGS enthused people, and got to play with a few big internet names like Aaron Hansen, Greg Miller, Rocco Bodie, and even Yang Ye himself. We ate, we drank, we played FOB matches against each other, and had a great time. But really the most important detail here is that there was free booze. And I took advantage of said free booze. I really wish I'd asked the bartender if there was a Metal Gear themed drink. A rusty fiddle, perhaps.
You may also remember the social media hour in which I was loose with a few details that net me a couple threats from a group of, lewd Yuri artists?
Obviously, I won't go into detail on the details here, but in one instance I was confirming something that a fan question led me to believe was pretty much common knowledge, and in the other something I felt was arbitrary to the series by now. Moral of the story, it's probably better to be vague in these situations. I apologize. That was my bad. Security at the event was just about as tight as you'd expect for something as big as this. We're talking card access doors, blackout curtains, constant supervision, even of outgoing social media traffic. They let us keep all our belongings with us because many of us were taking notes as we played. That said, it wasn't at all suffocating or stifling to our creative energy. They wanted us to effectively write material based on our experiences without letting too much slip before the release day.
Now, I've also been made aware of an article that warns people to take reviews coming out of this event with a grain of salt, because Konami paid to fly die-hard fans from around the country and put them up for a week to play their game in hopes that they would write glittering commentary that ignores entirely any negative feedback about the game without actually having spent enough time with it.
We had 4 goddamn days with the game, guys. More than enough time to get a feel for the way the game looks, handles, and behaves. All that's left now is to experience the final product on our own time. You can rest assured that I am armed with more than enough information and am not here to sell you. Though, as a fan, I think you'll be missing out if you decide against the game. Plus, they kind of bribe me with it. Really, if you're not already getting the game, why are you even watching this video? So, without further ado, my generous benefactors at MGSF have provided me with plenty of points to address here with my impressions, experiences, and, of course, all based on my hopefully unbiased and spoiler-free opinions during the event. In 4 days, we were barely able to scratch the surface of what Kojima's final entry in the series has to offer. After Ground Zeroes, I was hyped, but I was willing to wait for a price drop. Now, I'm hooked. I genuinely cannot wait to get back into this game as soon as it releases.
I should preface here that, as a taste of things to come, Ground Zeroes does not do this game justice. So much has changed, improved, really. For one thing, the controls are far smoother and fine-tuned, something that frustrated me to no end in the prequel.
I wish I had footage of this, but after playing 5 for 4 days, I figured I had the hang of things and would go back and try to actually beat Ground Zeroes. So I'm sneaking out of the drainage ditch to get to the admin building, and Snake fucking mounts the crates next to the opening! I was immediately spotted! I feel like in their efforts to make Snake's movements and control more free-form, they made him a little too eager to move, often directly into the enemy's field of view. I can safely say that no such shenanigans took place during my time with MGSV. Still, I'm a fan of the whole free movement. Ground Zeroes introduced what I felt was an improvement over previous titles, and MGSV perfects that, without Snake attempting sexual congress with geographically elevated obstacles.
While a lot has changed since Ground Zeroes, the suspicion mechanic seems to have remained about the same. Guard thinks he sees something, flashes his light, maybe goes to check it out. But that's mainly due to having less cover, fewer options at my disposal, and some of the stiffer mechanics that landed me in the sights of nearby Marines. Thankfully, the Phantom Pain has rectified most of those problems. The mission layout is similar to Ground Zeroes as well, in that you can return to a stage any number of times to complete or replay mission objectives, or even encounter additional side-ups while en route to an objective, which your iDroid will then make you aware of so you can handle it all in one run if you feel so inclined. On the subject of improvements, like most past entries, Ground Zeroes had an immediate alert phase, but introduced a grace period upon being spotted called reflex mode, in which the player had a brief, slow-motion window to neutralize the enemy before the alarm could be triggered. However, in Phantom Pain, enemy soldiers will shout if you miss your window, alerting nearby allies, but will then retreat to radio for reinforcements. And in the span of 4 or 5 sentences, the entire map can be aware of your presence somewhere in the area. There's no timer, but usually after a minute or two of staying hidden, the game will naturally progress through to another alert phase, regardless of time of day or weather effect. Speaking of weather, that has got to be one of my favorite additions. Before wandering into enemy territory, I'd make sure to tag everything I possibly could, so in the event of low visibility, I'd still have a pretty good idea where everything is, including equipment to demolish, material to collect, and soldiers to make sure and capture. When Donna Burke's voice came through the iDroid warning of an impending sandstorm, I'd be ready and reasonably excited. You can pretty much run right up to enemies without being spotted. It made for the perfect opportunity to rush and capture a guard post with no casualties or escape an area on high alert. Another addition brand new to the world of Metal Gear is the inclusion of drivable vehicles. Like with Ground Zeroes, a new form of stealth mobility is traversing in the back of trucks as unsuspecting soldiers drive you across the field undetected. As for driving the vehicles themselves, they handle about as well as you'd expect from any military-grade machine. They're not built for tight corners or high speeds, they're loud, and if you're in an open vehicle like a Humvee, people are gonna see you coming. I personally prefer D-Horse for travel.
Although there was this one mission where I had to destroy 3 tanks, I commandeered an MRLS, parked it up on a ridge, and rained down on their armored parade in what was surely the least Metal Gear way I could have possibly handled the situation. Long story short, they serve their purpose. They can be useful if you're willing to sacrifice some stealth.
The balance of gameplay styles is so perfect that you can, as shown in publicly released videos thus far, complete anything from standard missions to boss fights any of several ways, including straight up running away. The Deus Ex series comes to mind here, in its history of allowing players to solve problems from any number of angles. For instance, I didn't have a tranq rifle yet, and didn't really want to kill a certain boss I'd encountered, so I left the area instead, which cost me a little heroism, but opened up a new mission to take the boss on again later. I found myself being a lot more reckless than I usually would with one of these games, in an effort to progress as far as possible in the time given. Mind you, I was still being as sneaky as possible, and as one would imagine, the stealth factor shines here. All the old tricks are still intact. Boxes, camo, knocking, dumpster, or porta potty hiding, holdups, the whole shebang. And it's all been updated to let you utilize those same techniques in whole new ways.
That said, if spotted, I brandished my AR and went Jack Bauer Season 9 finale on anything that moved. Obviously, the rewards are different depending on your choice, but the game doesn't really penalize you for playing it like a shooter anymore.
In Peace Walker, after killing several enemies, your heroism would begin to take a dip, and it could seriously affect your final rank. This always struck me as a little frustrating, in that the game encourages you to develop a broad array of lethal weapons, but then discourages you from ever using them. And they want you to level up said items? MGSV differs here in that it's entirely possible to go Rambo, clear an entire mission guns blazing, and still come out with a pretty solid rank and boost in heroism. But that's not to say the option to run and gun makes the experience any less challenging. Because yes, while the difficulty option has indeed been removed, as many have seen in the gameplay demo footage, enemies do adapt their defensive strategies to compensate for your previous offensive strategies. So you can't just find a method that works for you and expect to bum rush the entire game that way. Well, I mean, you can try, but they're gonna start to see it coming and prepare accordingly. I've still got a lot of discovering to do, but I played pretty aggressively, so it wasn't long before they were arming themselves with helmets, shields, heavy body armor, and hell, even rocket launchers to prepare for my ambushes. Bear in mind though, I was trying to cover as much ground as possible in what little time I had, but I'll be sure to play my own copy more appropriately.
Besides, the whole world is at war with me, and I'm playing as Sergeant Roebuck.
2 more! Move! Keep your heads down! We're nearly there. Keep it together!
Anyone?
And on the subject of difficult encounters, this series has a habit of teasing you with powerful enemies you'll have to face somewhere down the line. And in my case, I always dread it, wondering how could I ever take on something that big, or that moves that way, or that has me so hopelessly outgunned. This game totally does not slouch in that department, and the sheer amount of boss fights I encountered just in the first region had me gasping for air. The Skulls unit, for example, is just as terrifying in combat as they are in the trailer, if not more so now that they can actually kick your ass. And that new Metal Gear ST-84 we saw in the trailer? Christ on a bike. Wait till you come face to face with it. There are plenty of beastly boss fights awaiting you in this new adventure. Make sure you bring the right gear. They also did away with leveling up weapons in exchange for weapon customization that surpasses even MGS4's extensive customization options. Gone are the days when the stun rod, trank gun, and Mosin Nagant were your only means for non-lethal action. This plays into the game's open-ended style and perspective, keeping it from being limited to only hardcore stealth gamers, and really adds more to the already extensive replay value, giving you more opportunities to undertake missions with a whole new arsenal to accommodate your preferred playstyle in a multitude of different ways, not merely limited by one-off attachments or stronger silencers the way Peace Walker leveled weapons. Obviously, if you want that 100% Big Boss Tsuchinoko ranking, you're gonna have to play it like a classic Metal Gear title. Buckle down, stay hidden, don't kill anyone, and no special items.
I haven't beaten the game yet, so it's entirely possible it addresses your body count in some way or another. Hopefully nothing so heavy-handed as the endless struggle against the sorrow a la Snake Eater. At least not with my kill count.
In addition to the mission approach and vast arsenal at your disposal, Snake himself is an entirely new beast. His abilities have come a long way since the original Metal Gear, where you could really only punch, shoot, crawl, and hide in a box. Since Ground Zero, Snake has adapted his CQC with fluid beatdowns, environmental takedowns, and situational counters. In addition to that, this latest foray offers such an incredible variety of options to supplement your soldier's arsenal of tactics. You can free climb small obstacles and terrain, you can operate any number of vehicles found across the battlefield, you can sprint at an inhuman pace for literally days, you can request a supply drop of extra Fultons and almost never have to leave the battlefield for anything. The possibilities are very nearly limitless. As most saw, the demonstrations posted online outlined quite a number of ways you could approach any given mission. This allows players to not only approach any mission in the style that best fits them, but thanks to the mission select structure, allows for experimentation. You can do things you otherwise wouldn't normally do, and what results can often surprise and enthrall you.
They say you can't have your cake and rocket punch it to oblivion. Rocket punch it to it, that's what you want me to say.
The open nature of this game has evolved it far beyond just being a stealth simulator. Stealth is entirely intact and has never been better, thanks to adaptive enemies and a wide arsenal to undertake a mission undetected. Still, the game endeavors to meet the playstyles of all takers to where no one style feels more polished than the other. Whatever your strategy, your experience will be intense and, above all, fun as all hell. Before we move on, let's touch on the environment within which we undertake these missions. In my playthrough, I made it through pretty much all of the Afghanistan area and most of the Africa area. I'm sure there's much more to be seen. I figured at first that I was pretty burnt out on games taking place in the Middle East. I wasn't at all looking forward to spending a huge chunk of the beginning of the game there. I wanted to get back to the industrial feeling that MGS2 brought to the table. But after some exploration, the Afghanistan stage is definitely my favorite thus far. There's so much to explore and such a wide variety of landmarks, forts, outposts, and even ruins to sneak around. And that's just one region. Oh, it's sandstorms, dude. Now, as most of you know, Metal Gear Solid 5 thrives on freedom of choice, the freedom to play this game in its entirety however you see fit. But it's also one founded on change. Change from the normative gameplay of past MGS entries. Change from the usual genres, and that Metal Gear came to be because Kojima had to find a way to make an action game work with the tools and technology he had at the time. And change in our lead character of 11 years now, Big Boss. And that change is not only reflected in his personality, but the actor who gives this character life. Many fans were, and still are, on the fence about that one blonde lost boy taking the reins of our favorite legendary soldier. We were told in the casting announcement from Mr. Sutherland that they wanted Snake to communicate more through facial expressions and body language than in spoken word, in an effort to make the player feel more like they are the protagonist rather than having the protag feed them their emotions. In-game, Snake is certainly a man of very few words, and after all he's been through, that's understandable. But it's not to say he's our new Gordon Freeman, strong silent type. When it comes to cutscenes, Venom Snake does not mince words. He speaks only when he needs to, and when he does, he commands your attention. He no longer wastes time unnecessarily parroting lines spoken to him by other parties. That said, if you listen to the cassette tapes you collect throughout the game, he speaks up plenty more. So rest assured, between in-game, cutscene, and tape interactions, there's plenty of Ace Merrill to go around.
You're dead.
Keith brings his A-game to this title. It's common to feel like A-list actors either don't have enough context for a given role or just phone in their performance. Here, our new Snake is a professional in his handling of the situations portrayed, and while his performance is far more subtle than we were used to with Hader, he definitely did his best to embody and respect the legacy of the series and the legacy of this character. The rest of the ensemble cast is as fantastic as ever. The new Miller is angry, brooding, rash, and Robin Atkin Downes is no slouch in his delivery. Troy Baker brilliantly carries us across the threshold from young, headstrong, accentless Ocelot to the gruff cowboy we first fell in love with. We know historically he's pretty much never to be trusted, but his performance is just so that you almost feel he's the only person you ever really can rely on. James Horan's Skullface is so much more animated, epic, and villainous than what we've seen and heard from him thus far. He was already pretty complex and disturbing from the Chico tapes and Ground Zeroes. Needless to say, he's developing quite nicely as far as MGS villains go, and Horan delivers. It's also worth noting that where in previous entries Russian soldiers either had an accent or didn't, but never actually spoke Russian, soldiers in this game actually speak the language of their native countries. You'll have to find and recruit interpreters to understand them, or even effectively hold them up. This whole game is a darker beast than it's ever been. BB being so much quieter and everything certainly lends itself to him feeling like a darker character. Events at the very beginning of the game are hugely explaining to this.
There is plenty of time.
The overall tone and feel is dark and brooding, without being too overbearing or even emo. It still has plenty of Kojima's quirky sense of humor though. But as a whole, this is a dark chapter which balances its tones quite well. The feeling cultivates in that same area of hopelessness and betrayal we felt when the boss threw Snake off a bridge in Dolino Vodno. As I played, I felt that while Snake and company weren't taking their losses lying down, it could only get worse from there. This sort of disparaging feeling almost always draws me in, much like the hellish descent of Guts from the anime Berserk. This game also tackles the ideas of death and torture in a much more present, attentive manner than previous games, that made me heed it that much closer and even regret when it would take place.
Story-wise, of course. In the field, I killed with impunity.
Cutscenes are sparse, usually every 3 to 5 story missions or so, and are definitely shorter and more to the point than previous games. They get across the important details and season in those classic crazy-ass MGS theatrics we've come to expect. As we saw in Ground Zeroes, they are shot in single-take format, and at times it even felt like you were the one behind the camera, following those involved. Cutscenes almost always blend seamlessly into gameplay, if not leaving you in control the entire time. It's not personally my favorite method of cinematography, but it worked for Birdman, and it works impressively well here. And on the subject of cinematic nuance, missions are also presented in an interesting, episodic manner, displaying credits before and after. And this I actually didn't like as a feature, because it would warn me ahead of time what or who to expect before the mission actually started.
It took some of the shock value out of it for me. But at the same time, I might see a certain boss in the credits and think, oh, fuck my fiddle.
In lieu of countless cutscenes and long-form exposition like the previous entries, backstory and lore are conveyed through cassette tapes, which you can find in the field or unlock by completing missions. These can be played seamlessly in the background while you undertake missions, so you can stay on top of the engrossing storyline without being pulled out of the game too much. This sidesteps the issue several past MGS games have had of stopping for 10 to 15 minutes at a time to have someone filling Snake's ears with non-stop exposition. And though many MGS fans claim codec conversations are a staple of the solid verse, there are far more engaging ways to tell a story than just having it told at you. These tapes remove the talking head factor and replace it with scenes that play out like radio dramas, which feel like genuine scenes coming to life in your mind's eye, while limiting needlessly lengthy exposition. That's not to say they outright replace conventional cutscenes.
trust me, there are still plenty of incredible cinematics to keep fellow cinephiles happy as well.
Speaking of tapes, while I can't speak on the actual tracks, I will say that just about every mission I went on, I've found a new one. There's a ton of licensed early 80s hits hidden throughout this game.
You should have seen the look on my face when I was sneaking around capturing an outpost holding people up and I suddenly heard, "Science!"
And that's just the bonus music. The game's actual soundtrack showcases an impressive audio engine that seamlessly transitions between background music for every area and phase of infiltration. Harry Gregson Williams returns to the series to produce the music for the cutscenes, with Justin Burnett of SOCOM and Siphon Filter series fame scoring them. They also worked on MGS 2 through 4, so they know what they're doing. Ludwig Ludo Forsell returns from Ground Zeroes to provide additional scoring, namely the game's theme, Sins of the Father, the lyrics for which he wrote and series veteran Akihiro Honda composed. The in-game music, as usual, is fashioned by a team of musicians, including Honda. It's definitely a departure from what we're used to, though, where previous entries employed a more electronic, almost pop jazz feel most of the time. This set follows the game's darker pacing. The music is subtle, yet powerful, abstract, yet direct, blending modern film soundtrack with an electronic touch.
It feels heavier, less portable.
It kept me on my toes in enemy territory, and really drove home the urgency of combat. The soundtrack flows through the cutscenes, not holding your hand, but enhancing the feelings the scene should convey.
Of course, going back to the tunes scattered around the game, those cassettes are just some of the many goodies you can find along your journey. After all, how could Kojima develop a bunch of wide open spaces and not line them with secrets, treasures, and references? There's plenty to be found if you're willing to explore, and I fully encourage you to do just that. For those who want to cut straight to the action, fast travel is available, but will inhibit your experience, and you owe it to yourself to savor all that this entry really has to offer.
And as anyone who's kept up with all things MGSV will know by now, you no longer have to explore it alone. In addition to all the vast support you have with Mother Base, which I'll come back to in a moment, MGSV allows you to go on missions with buddies you befriend or encounter as your journey progresses. I almost had Quiet, but like I said earlier, I bitched out of her intro, figuring I'd save her for later. I did, however, find D-Dog, or D-Wolf, DD, whatever you want to call him. He has most of the abilities you'd expect from a trained military or police dog, being an early warning for nearby threats, finding supplies, distracting enemies, is combat effective, and you can develop various types of equipment for him to wear into the field, making him even more useful.
Aaron and I agreed on this, though. As soon as we deployed on a mission with him, the first thing we thought was, great, well, where's my horse? We wound up swapping DD out for D-Horse before long.
You have to cover a lot of ground in this game, and the horse proves invaluable to this end almost right away. I did get to play with D-Walker for a little while, but it's also better suited for combat than travel. You can swap buddies out in the field from your iDroid if you can spare the GMP it would cost to do so, if you feel one would be more effective than the other in your situation. Going back to Quiet, most people kept pretty skeptical when Kojima said there was a reason Quiet dressed the way she did. While I myself hadn't befriended her, I sat in and watched my buddy from MGO forums play through the Visit Quiet side-up that unlocks after you capture her. Ocelot has been studying her and explains some of the things he's learned about her that make her so strange, extraordinary, deadly, and, yes, scantily clad. Suffice to say, Quiet's quite compelling, and far more than mere eye candy.
While I'm neither willing or able to go into more detail, I'll say this much. She's not Chico.
In addition to your buddies, as in Peace Walker, you have the option to replay missions as any of your recruits. BB stats are just fine, but capped, so it's possible for a soldier to have even better stats in certain or even all areas. And in-game, they handle much like Snake. Nonetheless, between your buddies and your additional field units, no support in this game is more vital than the support of your private army back at Mother Base. The development tree has a lot of really cool stuff to offer, but nothing that makes the game ridiculously easy, and it's all balanced out so that you'll have to play a lot to earn GMP, resources, and manpower to ever reach these items anyway. For example, from what I saw, the Rocket Punch is a single-use item, though the arm itself returns to you. There are plenty of development options to improve the arm with new functions throughout the game, and I'm sure the old infinite ammo bandana will show up at some point, so it's not at all far-fetched to think you could get additional uses out of it further down the line. This brings me to another point. Resource gathering reminded me a lot of the Far Cry series. You can find small caches of processed materials, medicinal plants, and even rough diamonds to take back to base without the need of a Fulton. Larger batches of materials necessary for R&D could be found in storage containers, but you have to upgrade your Fulton, have enough GMP to make the pull, and then keep them from being stolen from your FOB long enough for them to be processed for use.
Alright, so only that first part feels like Far Cry.
The Fulton mechanic is balanced out by charging you a small amount of GMP for each use. 300 for each soldier, 5,000 for each weapon emplacement, and likely more for vehicles and containers. At first I felt like it would only benefit me to bring home as much as possible, but before long I had to start being pickier about who or what I could afford to send home. You can also sell off equipment you've captured for some extra GMP. Base management gradually opens up as you progress through the game, once again as it did in Peace Walker. Miller will slowly commission new departments and platforms for you to staff and upgrade, all of which can be done at any time from your iDroid. He'll let you know that previously auto-assigned staff may be better suited to one of these new departments and leave it up to you to decide who should be moved, if anyone. You're free to just Fulton new recruits to staff said areas, but you're probably not getting the best out of your dev tree that way. The departments are the same as Peace Walker, with the addition of support and base development. Once you've got the Fulton, they let you know that the level of your support team, as well as weather, cover, and even alert phase will determine the chances of a soldier or item being successfully evacuated, and not just pulled up into the stratosphere and left to its fate. You can also extract animals, which Miller explains is a task commissioned to you by an NGO, aiding them to remove wildlife from active combat zones. After a few evacs, he commissions Mother Base their very own petting zoo, in which to keep the animals while waiting for pickup from said NGO. Miller will automatically assign recruits to the departments best suited to them. This saved me a lot of time, but you can of course reassign people at any time from your iDroid. I didn't get to play too much with FOB customization, but I raided a few of the Q&A team's bases, and while they all seemed to follow a similar basic structure, they were also fairly unique in design and security. I do hope you'll all come pay my base a visit.
You get a 2-minute head start. Then, I'm coming for your ass.
After invading an enemy forward operating base, the base enters a cooldown period. This could possibly grow the more you hit said base, keeping you from spamming it, which will certainly be an issue because even if you die, you keep what you steal. I didn't personally see a mechanic in place for bases being more alert to your presence for repeat visits, but if the solo campaign is any indication, I would imagine they adjust to welcome their new neighbors.
That is a lot of really obviously reading a Word document just below my webcam. And don't even get me started on how long it's going to take me to edit this thing. But all the time and effort spent describing how incredibly vast this game is in scope and feature will all be worth it in the end. Seriously guys, a bear with CQC. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain drops in just about a week on September 1st. Until then, blow it out your ass. What? Wrong game? Okay, well, let me start over. Well, I guess you could say I fiddled with Metal Gear Solid 5. Fucking Cameron. No, you told me that was comedy gold! I knew we were overusing the fiddle joke, son of a bitch!
Thanks again for watching, and if you need some more Metal Gear content to tide you over until the 1st, you should totally check out Soldiers Without Borders. It's a former MGS Machinima series turned 3D animation, which uses assets from the games. I composed the soundtrack and voice a few characters. The show is painstakingly written, directed, and animated by Cameron Nikat, who, with the approval of his brother Kevin, and the approval of the admins of this forum, who initially received the invitation to this incredible opportunity, hooked me up in their place. Cameron also helped me edit and proof this video, and wrote most of these jokes, so if they suck, blame him. Some of you may be wondering, why isn't this on Asobi? Why aren't you on Asobi? Don't worry, Asobi is still going strong and we're all still friends, but the nearly 2-hour commute keeps me from participating on the show any longer. But I still want to keep producing content on my end. But JoJo is still streaming and uploading on her end, so go check out their latest stuff. I'll be working with the guys from the Episode Show this week on a new series called Drunk Driving, so keep an eye out for that. Be sure to check out some of their recent top-notch comedy stylings here. And last, and I suppose least, I quit my job and I'm pretty much pursuing voiceover full-time, but I'm not limiting myself. I've got several on-camera projects in the works, including a short called The Painter, in which I played Travis and am assistant producer and composer for. So, yeah, I've got my hands full. Check out the teaser I threw together.
Hey everybody, just flew back from MGSV boot camp, and boy are my ears tired of hearing you people ask, is Quiet really like a transgender little Cuban boy? You owe it to yourself to savor a fucking shit. Savor a shit.